Alright guys, so today we'll be learning how to find the limit of a function. The very basic method. So we'll be following two steps, right? First step is direct substitution, where you just plug in x uh, into the function, and in this case x is -1, and you just plug that in. And if you get a number that is not 0 over 0, then you have your limit and you're fine. But if you do get 0 over 0, you move on to the second step, which is to simplify or reduce or to take out common factors from the function. And once you do that, then you just go back to direct substitution and you plug in x, right? And it's fairly simple. This is a very basic method to find the limit of a function. And so let's look at our first example. So we want to just plug in -1 for x. So we get 3 times -1 to the power of 5 minus 2 times -1 squared plus 7 times -1 plus 4. Now if we reduce this, we get -1 to the power of 5, which is still -1. So that would give us -3, and then -1 squared is 1, so that would give us -2, because -2 times 1 is -2. And then 7 times -1 is -7, and then plus 4. Now -3 minus 2 minus 7 gives us -12, and -12 plus 4 gives us -8. Now as you can see, this is now 0 over 0, so we have our limit, and that would be our answer. Now, as we all know, in every topic of calculus, there is always some sort of um, trig function application into each topic. So for limits in this case, it's pretty much the same. You just plug in x in the function. You do direct substitution. So in this case, pi times cosine of pi would be us doing our direct substitution. Now, if we use the unit circle and find cosine of pi, we'd get -1. So pi times -1 gives us -pi. And as you can see, it's not 0 over 0, so we have just done direct substitution and got our limit, and there's nothing much else to it. Now, say we do get 0 over 0, which we'll be getting in this example, then we would have to simplify this function right here. But first off, what you'd always want to do is always start with direct substitution, regardless if you already know that it's going to give you 0 over 0 and like in your head. So we would plug in -2 for x. We get -2 squared plus 5 times -2 plus 6, and then -2 plus 2. So we get 4 minus 10 plus 6 over 0, which gives us -6 plus 6 over 0, which is 0 over 0. Now let's go back to our original function. So we're trying to find the limit as x approaches -2. And when I look at this function, I can automatically see that x squared plus 5x plus 6 can be simplified or factored out into x plus 2 times x plus 3. Because as we all know the method, we have to find two numbers that will multiply to get us 6, and two numbers that would also add up to get us to 5. And 2 plus 3 gives us 5, and 2 times 3 would give us 6, right? So that's how we'd factor it out, all over x plus 2. And over here you can see that there's an x plus 2 on the top and an x plus 2 on the bottom, and we can just cancel that right out. And so the limit as x approaches -2, we now only have x plus 3 remaining. So now we can just plug in -2 for x, which is -2 plus 3, and our answer is 1. So now this is like the full maximum capacity of our rules. We have used direct substitution first, and we ended up getting 0 over 0. And 0, 0 is not an answer. It just means it's telling us to keep going and simplify the function. So we go back, we simplify the function, and then we go back to direct substitution, and we plug in for x, and we get the answer. And I also have one last example is to, practice some more. Now, we would just plug in 1 for our function, like always. So we get 1 squared minus 4 over 1 squared minus 3 times 1 plus 2. Now 1 minus 4 over 1 minus 3 plus 2 gives us negative 3 over negative 2 plus 2, which gives us negative 3 over 0. Now this one is a bit different. This one, negative 3 over 0 is not 0 over 0, but it's also not an answer that we could use. In this situation, what you'd want to do is, for now, because this is early stages of finding limits, you just write does not exist, right? Because that is not a number, that's not an answer, and it's not 0 over 0, so the answer is it does not exist, the limit. But later on you'll notice that this actually means that there's a vertical asymptote at x equals 1. This is what this means. It means there's a vertical asymptote at x equals 1. And that would mean that it's either like a graph going forever up, right? Say like this is 1, and over here it is always going in the infinity, positive infinity. And we can't have a limit because it's forever just going like that. There's no limit to this function. So either later on they'll have you say, find the vertical asymptote, and in that situation you just say the vertical asymptote is at x equals 1. Or you can write the limit could be positive infinity or negative infinity, because technically the limit is infinity, right? Because it just keeps on going forever and ever. So that could be the limit. But for now, all you need to know is that it does not exist. There is no limit. So some key takeaways in finding a limit from this video is, first step, direct substitution, right? You just plug in x, plug in your x value, and if you get a number, then you have your answer. But if you get 0 over 0, then you move on to second step, which is simplify. And when you simplify, then you go back up to direct substitution. And so you want to also learn that there's 3 different forms in which you can get like an answer, right? You can get 0 over 0, which just tells us that we need to keep going and simplify. The second form could be like a number over 0, which just tells us that we have a vertical asymptote at that x value, at x. And the other form could be any number over another number. For example, say we get 0 over 4, because, that would mean that the limit is at a real number, which is 0, right? So that means the limit is at 0, limit at x equals 0. And yeah, so these are the 3 main things. So if you get 0 over 0, make sure you go and simplify the function. And then once you simplify, you just go and do direct substitution. If you get any number over 0, then that's a vertical asymptote, and you either write does not exist, or if the question asks for it, you will write infinity, negative infinity. And if you get any number over another number, that is a real number, and you have a limit at that number. And that is it for finding the basic way to find a limit.